organization that's dedicated to empowering Black women professionally and socially through sisterhood and activism. Joining us tonight for our event, I'm honored to introduce Joel Brown, who's going to talk to us today about budgeting, savings, and investing. We probably have a strong interest in today's topic, unfortunately, given today's economic downturn as a result of the COVID 19 pandemic. And we are all concerned about financial security during these difficult times. After the speaker's presentation, we will have a Q&A session. So during our speaker's presentation, however, you're invited to utilize the chat box to write any questions you may have for the speaker during the presentation. At the end of the presentation, I will ask the speaker, Joel, for questions for him to answer them as well. But like I mentioned before, if there's a chat box, feel free to utilize it if you have any questions during the presentation. And if not, then we will have time at the end of the presentation for Q&A, and Joel will answer them as possible. Now I would like to turn it over to Joel Brown. Joel Brown is a good friend of mine professionally. I've known him over 10 years, and I'm eager to have him participate in this event. And I will turn it over now to Joel Brown to introduce himself and tell us more about his professional background. Thank you.
Hey, you all. First and foremost, Black Girls Link, Casey, Minica, thank you all for having us to come and be a part of your event today. Thank you for giving us a chance to connect with you and really a chance to support what you all have going on. It is awesome, and it's beautiful to see what you all are doing, and you all are doing really good work. Just a little bit of background, very simply, I'm a graduate of Valdosta State University. I've been in and around finance for over 7 years. And the thing I love most is, of course, family. I'm a husband, I am a girl dad, and as of Saturday, I am a pet dad. So my negotiation skills are not really that great. I lost to a 3-year-old who somehow convinced me that we needed to go ahead and get a pet, but I am over the moon and excited to be picking up our pet as of Friday. So a lot to look forward to this week. But let me go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the PowerPoint that we have here today. Go. And so we're going to be speaking about very generally financial tips for your 20s and 30s. Very, of course, relevant here today, given all that we're going through. But on a positive note, there's going to be some good that comes out of this because we are definitely changing for the positive. We're adapting. And I don't know about you, but in order to stay sane, I'm trying to find things to do, to occupy my time and to be positive. And so just to kind of lead off with a couple fun facts in this quarantine, I decided to pick up running just a little bit, and not starting at a 5K. I decided to go for the gold and try to attempt a half marathon. I was successful. I'm continuing to run, but somebody should have told me it's a little lonely running 13.1 miles all by yourself while we're in this quarantine phase. Also picked up gardening, home garden, just as something else to do. So that's kind of what I've been doing, and hopefully you're finding positive things to do with your time in the midst of this quarantine, as we are socially distant, but still very much connected in so many ways. As just a brief disclosure before we kind of dive in, there's 3 things anytime we speak about investment finance that we must always let clients, potential clients, and everyone know. And it's just good information to know, and that is that investments are not FDIC insured. They are not guaranteed by a bank, and of course they may possibly lose value. But of course, we're going to go ahead and dive right in. I like to kind of lead off by saying a little bit about how we work with our clients and really speak to who we are to our clients. And just a short phrase really captures all that we do and that is that we are empathy in action. So again, empathy in action. We are proactive, we are in our client's corner, and we are as much a friend as we are an advisor, helping them as, of course, they navigate their way through key financial decisions all throughout life. So today, we're going to discuss on our agenda day-to-day expenses. Very simple, very straightforward there. We're going to talk about emergency funds. We're going to touch on a little bit about renting versus buying, student loans, whew, that's a big one, and other debt, as well as, of course, preparing for the future. So budgeting for day-to-day expenses. Real simple fact right here, real simple statistic, and that is that the average consumer expenditure is approximately $29,359, and that is looking at the average American age 25 to 34, and that is being spent each year on food, on housing, apparel, but it does not include what we're spending on things like transportation, gifts, vacations, weddings, and other things. So it's not a surprise that it can actually be a challenge to really balance our income with our expenses. But what you can do is, of course, clearly define your goals. You want to spend some time clearly defining your goals, because they can provide you with the actual financial decisions that you need to make and really help you get started. And in order to do so, you kind of got to start by first asking yourself some very simple and very honest questions, beginning with why does this goal matter to you? You know, what is its purpose? When, of course, do you want to reach this goal? And with that one, you want to set some hard dates there. You want to get very specific and really hold yourself accountable by setting that date. Of course, you want a target amount. So what dollar amount are you going to need to achieve that goal? And of course, you know, what actions can you take to help you reach that goal? And just as a quick tip, breaking your goals into smaller chunks with deadlines. So again, with that accountability, makes those goals that much more doable. So of course, you want to evaluate your financial picture. You want to get very open, very honest, and really see where you are. You want to review your finances periodically and try to balance your needs and goals. You can do this, of course, by setting up what's referred to as a spending plan to help you find your way in that process. What is the spending plan? Some may ask. It's basically, I like to say, one-page worksheet, whether on a piece of paper, on the back of an envelope, something very simple, very straightforward, but it gives you a chance to record the money coming in and your money going out each month. And creating a spending plan can help you understand exactly where you're spending your money so that, of course, you can pursue your goals. Also, to help is setting up a budget. And I know we don't really kind of like to use that word. Nobody gets excited about the word budget. But I like to say just a simple guideline, and it's referred to as a 50-30-20, where you're looking to hold your income about 50%, putting it toward essential expenses, such as housing, utilities, groceries, transportation, etc. About 30% towards your wants. So anything that we refer to as easily, you know, can be eliminated if you don't absolutely need it. And of course, about 20% for saving. That could be emergency fund, that can be education expense, that can be retirement, or even, again, paying down debt. You want to remember to also fit in the fun stuff. And think about what you like to do for fun. So, you know, especially now that kind of things have been impacted, you have to kind of get creative when it comes to fun. But I mean, it can still be eating out. It can be several hobbies. As I mentioned, I picked up gardening, I picked up running. Not so much social activities right now. Of course, we want you to be safe out there, but when we are able to get back socializing, social activities, make provisions so that you can do the fun things. Also, events, vacations down the road, weddings, birth of a child. What you want to do is you want to determine how much you may need for each of those and allocate for it. You want to budget for these activities, these special events in advance so that you can enjoy yourself. And of course, tying it all together. We want to make sure that we're really living our lives. It's so much more than just the day-to-day grind. You want to make sure that you're really taking out time for yourself, because guess what? The fun stuff, it keeps us sane. I don't know about you, but 7 months working from home, a little bit lax on the socializing as we are, of course, social distancing. You want to do things that's going to keep you sane and really keep you grounded. So again, things to consider. What are your goals? How much do you need to save? And of course, reevaluating from time to time. Have your priorities change? Especially in this time frame that we're in right now, priorities are changing day in and day out. So do periodically go back and kind of reevaluate that and see if things have changed and have kind of a need to be updated. Now, some actual action steps. Again, you want to track your expenses. You want to get real. You want to get aware about, again, what's coming in and what's going out. You want to create a budget, not necessarily to limit yourself, but to really kind of, have a set of guardrails or guidelines so that, what you're doing is reasonable. And of course, you want to manage your expenses. Now, for those who maybe aren't familiar with budget, you haven't tried to do one before, you haven't, pulled one up on Excel, I did include a little link at the bottom, go.ml.com/budget. One thing about us, I love to give away stuff free. So by all means, check it out. If it can be a resource for you, definitely take advantage of it. So stepping into the next thing, and that's building an emergency fund. One key fact is that only 18% of Americans have enough in emergency savings to cover 6 months of expenses. That's a little fact that's kind of been floating out there for a long time, but in light of what we're dealing with today, I think it is very much in our face, and it's kind of like a mirror for us to look at our own personal financial situation and really assess kind of where we are. Again, only a fraction of Americans, 18%, really have enough to cover 6 months of expenses. And so I wanted to kind of highlight this because sometimes it gets neglected. I'm pretty sure we're surrounded by pretty strong earners. We have, jobs that really are, tending to us well. But often some of us are really living paycheck to paycheck. It's not necessarily the idea of, only have a couple hundred in the bank. You may have a couple thousand sitting there, but have you really took the time to assess whether or not you have enough saved to cover a few months of expenses? Some people have definitely lost their job. We're still at a situation where nearly 11 million people are without jobs, without employment. And that could very much well be us, not just for, the pandemic, but even, simple common emergencies, sickness, job loss, car accident, any number of things can put us in a position where we may not be able to work for an extended period of time. So what can we do? We can think about how an emergency fund can help us. We can look to set up an emergency fund to really prepare us for the unexpected expenses. And just a quote that I want to share with you that was really impactful to me. And it was shared by a gentleman by the name of Dave Ramsey. So Dave Ramsey. I actually saw it on his Instagram page, so feel free, of course, to check it out. But I thought it was a great way to kind of evaluate whether or not your emergency fund is enough. And he stated that an emergency fund turns a crisis into an inconvenience. So again, an emergency fund turns a crisis into an inconvenience. So I thought that was really impactful. And having an emergency fund can help for things such as, again, paying for expenses that were not anticipated, even some that are anticipated. We know we have car maintenance coming up, any number of things. I won't go through a full list of that, but paying for those extra expenses without derailing your spending plan. Doing so helps you to avoid paying credit card interest and fees. It helps you prevent future setbacks by having a cushion, and helps you avoid taking loans from your 401k plan that can kind of interrupt what you're doing long term there. So to get started, you really kind of got to start by really deciding on a goal, specifically as it relates to having an emergency fund. And just some simple steps to get started. You may want to aim for $500 to $1,000 initially. After reaching that goal, you're going to want to continue to save up additional until you get to your first month of expenses saved. And then, of course, from there, building on and on, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9, whichever you feel is most important. I think in light of kind of what we just experienced, we are starting to really tend to lean towards 6 to 9 months of funds readily accessible in case anything comes up. Now, some principles I do want to highlight specifically around this. Pay yourself first. I think that is really key when it comes to emergency fund, setting it as a priority, giving it purpose, and giving it intent. You do that by, of course, you can set up an automatic transfer to a savings account. You can deposit any what we call found money. Think gifts, birthday gift, Christmas gift, tax refund, bonuses, all that can be considered found money. You can deposit that into a specific savings account in which you have earmarked for emergency fund. And you want to keep those funds safe. You don't want to play with those funds. You don't want to gamble. You don't even want to invest those funds. You want to keep those in a very safe account, such as one in which is FDIC insured, checking savings account, you name it. So again, we have a slide tying it all together. And I just want to take a moment to speak on some things to consider. Again, unexpected life events, the fund might help with medical expenses, job loss, car and home repairs, unexpected vet bills, any number of things. But again, I want to highlight, you want to give yourself some parameters. So you want to, of course, set aside these funds with intent and with purpose. Set your goal, establish a dedicated account for your emergency fund, and start to begin building those savings. So going again to renting versus buying, mortgage payments should not exceed 28% of your monthly pre-tax income. Many people haven't really given it much thought, but honestly, it is going to be your biggest expense that most people deal with. And you don't want to over leverage yourself or overtax yourself by having a mortgage payment that is well beyond what you're capable of. Aside from the price tag, also, you want to consider some trade-offs that you might consider when purchasing a home. Things such as, does home ownership really fit with your lifestyle? Are you settled in the sense of, are you fixed on a location, or are you looking to move in the near future? If you're looking to possibly change jobs in the next 3 years, it may not make sense to make such a huge commitment up front, knowing that you're going to have to turn around and sell that home. Also, you want to keep in mind and ask yourself, would having a mortgage payment prevent me from saving or doing other things that are important to me? Again, you don't want to put yourself in a position where you can't be beneficial to your future self and you're actually being detrimental to yourself and your financial health. So again, things to consider, pros and cons of home ownership, again, before you buy. Advantages. There are definitely potential tax advantages. You can speak with the tax advisor around those, but know that there are some advantages that come with being a homeowner. There's the opportunity to potentially build equity. There's also pride in home ownership. You really are proud when you have that moment where you take that picture and you've closed on the house, it's your first home. There is a measure of pride that comes with that. Also stability. And of course, mortgage payments could total less than rent payments over the long term, so over time. However, there are some disadvantages to think about. There are, of course, property taxes associated with it. And once you're a homeowner, those are always going to be there. Homeowners insurance, upfront down payment and closing costs. A long-term commitment, again, you own the home and ideally you're going to be there for a while. And also, of course, maintenance and repairs. And one thing that's not up there, but I can certainly speak to as I'm experiencing it, if you have a homeowners association, those are additional costs as well. And oftentimes they tend to bug you as a homeowner for the smallest thing. Your grass is a little too high. The edging needs to be done, spray off your driveway, any number of things. But just weigh your options. Think about it. What are the benefits? What are not necessarily drawbacks, but some of the disadvantages, and see if it really makes sense for what you are looking to do. So again, things to consider: where do you want to live and for how long? Is renting or buying more cost effective? Do you have enough for a down payment, closing costs, and other expenses? So you want to do your research specifically for the target market or the housing market that you're looking at. You also want to evaluate your credit situation, and you want to set a reasonable price. Again, another helpful link there at the bottom, go.ml.com, preparing for home ownership. If you have an interest in possibly pursuing a mortgage, just as a source of good information that you can use to help evaluate that decision and things to think about there. Moving on to the student loan debt. I think this is probably a big topic, a hot button topic for everyone. And I first looked at this slide, I saw that it stated that the average student loan debt per person was $32,731 coming out of school. I would gladly trade that with that individual who has that, but of course it's an average. So I take that with a grain of salt, I understand. But student loan debt is probably one of the biggest liabilities, the biggest expenses, the biggest thing that we owe outside of the home that we live in ourselves or own ourselves. So it's definitely critical, and even more so important nowadays as students are being saddled with an astronomical amount of debt. And of course, coming into a bit of a timid market, not just this year with this pandemic, but over the past few years and decade, as far as job opportunities. So I'm going to take a little bit of time here. I know it's a tying it all together slide, but I'm going to kind of really dive in and elaborate a little bit. So here are some steps that you're going to want to consider when it comes to managing student loan debt. First, you want to think about whether you can afford your regular payments on your loan. You just want to be honest. You want to be open. You want to be direct with yourself. Ask yourself the question: when they send that sheet and those sample repayment schedules, which are typically listed over 10 years, is that reasonable? Is that feasible? And does it make sense for what I'm looking to do? One thing you really want to be cautious about: defaulting is going to have a negative impact on your credit and future financial wellness, hands down. Student loans is a whole nother beast, one that you can't even get rid of them in bankruptcy. So again, the idea of even considering default, you're not going to be able to get rid of these things or shake them. So you want to address them head on. You want to be very direct and very serious about evaluating, like I said, what makes sense for you. You want to, again, investigate repayment plans that are available to you. You may have selected one or been assigned one I won't say inadvertently, but starting out, that may not be the best thing for you. However, you can always restructure your loan or restructure your payment schedule, and that's actually free of charge to do so. So take out time to really educate yourself, to get knowledgeable about what your payment options are, and really think about the time frame for paying back your loan that makes sense for you. You want to also consider the amount of interest you're going to be paying. So if you select an extended payment option, of course, it's just going to draw up more interest while making minimum or even negligent, just not even serious principal payments. So think about that. Again, ultimately, just making sure that it fits into your budget. See what works best for you. And of course, come up with a strategy that's going to allow you to go ahead and really address that. You may also want to consider consolidating your loans, or perhaps, again, extending payment period. That will be beneficial to you. So something that's going to work for you and get those payments in line with what you have allocated in your budget. And depending on your circumstances, again, before you even think about going into default, know that there are options such as deferment and forbearance. Just be sure to consider the pros and cons of these options, as each one does have a different effect on your loan and your loan payments. So managing debt and using credit. So the typical person is going to spend approximately $279,000 on interest, specifically related to credit card purchases over time. That's not a small number, and it definitely warrants a serious conversation about how we utilize credit and how it plays a factor in our budget, in our lives, assets, and liabilities. Specifically on credit, of course, your credit history affects the interest rate that you're paying. Specifically, oftentimes, better credit rating or credit score, you're going to be offered a better loan rate or a better interest rate over time. You're going to pay less. Conversely, if you don't have a great score, you're going to be charged more in interest, and you're going to pay more over time. I do want to speak to you very briefly about two methods of paying off debt. Two very common methods, and of course, there are many others that you can consider, but I just want to highlight these two real quick. The first one on the left-hand side is the avalanche method, or the high interest rate method. And what this is, each month, of course, you're going to find a payment that works for you. So you're going to look to pay the largest payment that you can afford on the debt with the highest interest rate. And of course, when that is paid off, you're going to, of course, repeat the process with the debt with the next highest interest rate, and so on. Of course, this method is usually popular because you're paying off the highest interest rate first and potentially saving yourself money in the long run. The second one is the snowball method, or referred to as the low balance method. Very similar as far as payments. You're going to find what payment works best for you. Making the largest payment that you can afford on the lowest balance. When that's paid off, you're going to go ahead and repeat the process again with the debt with the next highest balance, paying that off, and so forth. And this method, again, is also popular because you're going to see progress a little bit more quickly. And you can use that momentum to really drive motivation for paying off the next debt and the next debt and the next debt. So, you know, either one is really your choice, is great. Whichever method you choose, you just want to be sure that you continue making minimum monthly payments on all your other debts, so you're not charged any late fees, any penalties. Now, understanding your credit score. Now, I think there's a lot that has been shared. There's a lot that has been updated around credit score. A lot of information's out there, a lot of knowledge. So I won't go too far in depth with credit score. We know it's important. Yeah, we definitely know that. And of course, your credit score is simply a number of your credit worthiness. It can also be a measurement of how debt affects your financial health. And that's really how lenders are evaluating it, seeing how much debt you have, how you handle that debt, how you pay it, the types of debt you have, and really looking to see how that's affecting your financial health overall. Now, your credit score is made up of about 35% payment history, about 30% based off the amount that is owed, about 15% on the length of credit history that you have, about 10% on the credit in use, and about 10% on new credit. Of course, this is why it's important to check your credit report regularly, at least once a year, at the very least once a year. And of course, again, another just quick link, go.ml.com/credit score if you do have an interest in trying to learn more about it, strategies and tips for helping to increase it and address it. We do have some resources available for you that you can definitely take advantage of. So things to consider, not just specifically around credit, but debt in its entirety. You're going to want to pay a bit more if you can. The caveat is, again, if you can. If you can afford it to pay down that debt, go ahead and do so. You want to, of course, pay on time, and you want to pay every time. That's going to build a better credit history. And of course, you want to investigate also transferring your balance, especially as you approach maybe paying off credit cards or something similar within maybe a year or two. There may be certain credit cards that offer a chance to transfer a balance and get 0% interest. So just some things to think about as you're evaluating your options, specifically around credit. And of course, watch your spending. That is first and foremost key. Watch your spending. One thing about, kind of the psychology behind it, when you're swiping a credit card, you're not really connected to your money. You tend to spend more. So just be mindful, be very aware, and of course, watch how often you pull that card out. Just swipe at the grocery store, the gas station. You are, of course, putting yourself in more debt every time you do that. But things again to do, you want to identify the amount and the type of debt. You want to check your credit report regularly. And again, you want to explore pay down options for how you can, of course, address and manage that debt. I do want to highlight the link at the bottom, annualcreditreport.com. That is where you can go each and every year to get your free credit report and credit score. So I definitely want to highlight that. Definitely, if you have not done it, go check it out. They'll give you all 3 bureaus free of charge. No charge there, no gimmicks, none of that. Definitely a resource I want to highlight on that one. So now moving into preparing for the future, and just right up front, average cost of retirement, $738,000. It's a big number. It is a huge number, and it really is just a reality check for what it actually costs as a lump sum, what number we need to be working toward to really get to a point where we retire. We're going to be in a comfortable position. Now, this is not the end all be all as far as amounts. It's of course adjusted according to the client. Some may need less, some may need a whole lot more. It really depends on your lifestyle and what you consider to be goals and what you're really trying to achieve in retirement. But on average, about $738,000 there. So things to consider for retirement. First and foremost, retirement is a major expense. How much we just saw, $738,000 is the average amount. And Merrill actually estimates that you're going to need approximately 90% of pre-retirement after-tax income. So your pre-retirement income, after you've paid IRS all their portions, the state governments, everything, what you take home, you want about 90% of that in retirement available each year that you're retired. So to give you an idea of the lump sum amount that you'll actually need, again, you can even do it just kind of based off of right now what you're earning, take 90% of that and multiply that by the number of years you'll be retired. That could be 20, 30 years. And that just gives you a general kind of, back of the envelope figure of what you need to be targeting over the long term for how much you need to save. And the key there is to really get started early and to take advantage of compounding. That's how you'll be able to, of course, achieve that goal. And of course, it all begins by setting forward a plan. So to give you an example, I'm going to take you through just 2 very simple examples here. On the left-hand side, we have Chris. He's starting at age 35, which is very common, very reasonable there. He's making a $133 monthly contribution. They, of course, scheduled that out over 30 years, so approximately $48,000 he's going to contribute over that time. And we're just assuming a simple 6% return on his funds. So at age 65, he could potentially have $130,000 at age 65. Terry, on the other hand, she's going to be starting a little bit later, and just to give you an example, at age 45. Now she is contributing more. She's contributing $200 monthly. Again, over 20 years, it's going to be about $48,000 in contributions. And she can expect potentially to have about $91,000 at age 65. Just to give you an idea of what compounding looks like, but you can take either one of those numbers, and if we flip back, 738,000, it's a pretty large gap. And of course, that's what we work to do to really address, how do we get you to that point to where you can retire comfortably. So again, things to consider. What employee benefits does your company offer, especially as we come into the fall season or round out the fall season? Many of you are going to be having your company reach out to you. It's time for benefits. They're going to make sure you at least look at it once a year, but this is the time to really open up the email, dive into the information that's provided and see what your company offers. You want to consider different types of tax advantaged accounts. Tax advantage being the idea that you're able to set aside money, and traditional tax advantage is that you set aside money before tax. That potentially has the chance to grow over time. And of course, when you access the funds down the road, you'll pay taxes at that time. You may also see some terms such as Roth, and how that is similar but different. It is still tax advantage. Your contributions are after tax, so you've already paid Uncle Sam his portion. You put these funds in this tax advantage account, again, with the potential for growth, with the hope that at the time that you go to withdraw the funds, the account has grown considerably, and now you're able to withdraw these funds tax-free. So again, you want to reach out if they haven't reached out to you, or if they have reached out to you, you want to, of course, look into what benefits your company offers. This can be 401ks, this can be IRAs, Roth IRAs, this can be health savings accounts, flexible spending accounts, any number of things. But you want to make sure you're taking advantage, you're enrolling in your benefits. You want to make sure you're reviewing them periodically. They're going to make you do it once a year, but it doesn't hurt to do it more than once, just to see what you have, to kind of reevaluate your progress towards your goals. And most importantly, I do want to highlight, you want to actually contribute to your employer if they are providing you.
That's Denise.
With regards to that match, I like to refer to that as free money on the table. And you don't come across that often, but just as a general example, if they're going to give you 3% or match your contribution up to 3%, again, free money on the table. Even if you don't do anything as far as investments, you want to do enough contribution that you get that matching from your employer. All right, so this is, again, tying it all together, and this is kind of everything coming together. We've covered a lot of ground today. Really just kind of a high-level highlight of things to consider. But here's a summary of some of the steps that you're going to want to consider taking. Again, you're going to want to clearly define and prioritize your goal, put numbers with that goal, put dates with that goal, be accountable as it relates to that. You want to create that 50, 30, 20 budget. Again, it's just a guideline to kind of help you around that for how you should allocate your income. But it helps you also be accountable for your goals and to help you pursue them. You want to set up an emergency fund, help you prepare for those unexpected curveballs that we are experiencing right here, right now. And you want to, of course, save it for your future goals. You want to review your goals periodically, and of course, just review and kind of assess whether or not those priorities have changed. You want to find effective ways to manage debt, maybe the snowball effect, not effect, but a snowball method, or maybe the avalanche method, or even any other method that you come up with that works. You want to look at that as a way of possibly reducing some of the debt that you currently have, or maybe anticipate getting, in the near future. And finally, you want to make intentional choices. I kind of hit on it before with purpose and intent, especially as it relates to your emergency fund. But you want to be intentional. You want to be aware of what is coming in, is going out. You want to be connected to your money. You want to be connected to your goals. You want to be connected to your vision going forward. Specifically because the decisions you make today, they can have an effect long-term on your financial health. So of course, just to wrap up, I have here some additional resources that you can definitely take advantage of. A lot of it is education, information to back up the presentation that we just went through, in case you want a deeper dive on that. But also included is what's referred to as a family life organizer. Even if you have not thought about utilizing a financial advisor, it's never too early to begin to organize your financial life and to really, again, be accountable and take, priority over, what you have going on. So that family life organizer will help you to get organized, and really is kind of, a first step, especially as it relates to planning out some of your legacy and estate kind of needs, getting things organized, which of course our community definitely needs. And of course, it's really another discussion that, is possibly down the road, but, again, never too early to start. So of course, Minika, if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them as much time as it needs. I, just want to kind of gauge your thoughts, go kind of through, what your questions are, and of course, leave everything on a positive note. I do appreciate the time that was given to us today, and of course, greatly appreciate being on here and you all inviting me into your homes digitally.
Thank you, Joel. The information you gave was really good. We're going to now turn to Q&A. And I see we have a question in the chat box. And also, if you haven't done so already, please feel free to utilize the chat box. You can message me privately. We have a couple of minutes for Q&A, so please feel free to utilize the chat box. The first question we have, Joel, is it common in New York City is 738,000 in your retirement account average for New York City?
New York City, especially. I would actually say that it is, I won't say necessarily common, but it is definitely possible. In our line of business, because we deal with high net worth clients, it's almost kind of a given just for the clients that we typically deal with. But you would be surprised. This is kind of going back to kind of some of my early days in finance. How many teachers, how many engineers, how many city workers actually have a significant amount of savings, especially like I say coming off generations where saving was a big priority. It is actually more common than you would think to see a significant balance. Now, also one thing I want to kind of highlight, it wasn't covered in this, but one thing you want to think about, that number, while it is large, typically encompasses such things as Social Security, pensions, and some other benefits that, of course, we don't really think about them as being a significant portion, but they are a significant portion of how people plan their retirement, and they do make up kind of a lump sum of that portion that they need to actually reserve. And typically, when we do our plans, we'll take our clients through what their Social Security might be. If they don't already know the numbers, we'll give them an estimate and let them know how that factors into their plan.
Thank you so much. We have an additional question. Where should you start when investing?
Awesome. A lot I could say to that one. Surprisingly, this is probably going to be one of those things you see in the media. It's like, yeah, nah, you probably shouldn't even look at those. Simple things such as mutual funds, simple things such as ETFs. Those are particular instruments that are really a basket of stocks. You're not trying to be a stock picker, or you're actually looking to invest kind of wholly into the market. Those are great things to look into starting out. Another thing to consider is, and I found this to be a fun activity when I was first getting into investing. For the common things that you deal with on a day-to-day basis, flip that bar of soap around, flip that bottle of soda around, and look to see, what company is in your home. Who do you already support? Who do you kind of have an idea of what's quality? Not to name drop here, sitting here, I got Apple AirPods. I'm on a, HP computer. I have a Samsung TV. Common household names, just to begin to look and to get familiar with things. These are tangible things you can touch. And, this is what you're paying for when you're getting into a stock. You're paying for their earnings. You're paying for what they could potentially, do and how they can grow into the future. So it all kind of starts with just having a bit of a curiosity. There's many things you can do without having to really put up real money. And I do encourage you to, check out some websites, whether it be Morningstar or MarketWatch, where you can kind of build a virtual portfolio. And, you don't have to necessarily kind of risk it all up front, but to really leave you with kind of step-by-step how to really get there. As was definitely highlighted in the PowerPoint, it begins with a solid financial foundation before anything. Having savings, having an emergency fund. And those two are very much different. Not just, I can say, being a strong earner, but being a strong saver to start out with, developing that emergency fund, mostly likely utilizing your employer benefits, so that matching. I don't want to see anyone putting money into a brokerage account before you put money into your 401k, because if there's matching on the table, free money, that's what you should be taking advantage of. Let that be your first foray or experience into the market, handling those key foundational pieces. And then, of course, from there, you can build upon that.
Thank you. We have some additional questions. The first being, how do you suggest saving for rainy days, retirement, and purchasing a house simultaneously?
Sure. So kind of the first one, saving, for rainy day, that's honestly pretty self-explanatory. Now I will share with you some things that I do. These are just really one-offs, but I just find it fun. I collect change. That's funds, specifically an account for my daughter as well as my niece. I collect change along with our family members, and we pool those funds together. And of course, we are just, again, giving them their first experience of, investing. I'm an advisor, so of course it doesn't take me but a second to, pick some simple things, and it's nothing complicated, just something simple. And I do that, when I actually have cash, which I'm working on, getting away from swiping debit cards and credit cards. Just dollar bills or $5 bills, what you have left at the end of the day, setting those aside, taking those out of your wallet, putting those aside. That way you don't spend them, and then depositing that maybe into a savings account or checking account, whichever you prefer. Leading into saving for a home, because I know that's very important. Did not have a lot of knowledge about that. I just went through the process about a little over 3 years ago. First and foremost, you want to sit down for some education. You want to, whether that be online, probably online right now. When we get to a point, there may be some in-person education, but you want to get knowledgeable. You want to ask questions. You want to know what questions to ask, and you want to ask people that have done it. Get some wisdom around you, and that'll really speak to kind of what you need to do. As far as getting to a dollar amount, typically 20% is the gold standard of down payments to get to. But know that there are some government programs out there that can help you, and banks can speak to that, credit unions can speak to that. There are programs that are in place where you may not have to do the full 20% down. You may only do 10, 5% down. It just depends. There are state programs in place to help you with down payment assistance. So look into your state to see kind of what options they have. Off the top of my head, HUD. I forget the acronym, Housing, I think Urban Development or something. The HUD department provides a lot of educational material, also provides a lot of links to some of those very same resources that can help you with down payment assistance. So, that's how you approach it. You approach it, again, with good questions, a curious mind, and seeking out the resources that's going to help you achieve your goal. And lastly, when it comes to investing, make it simple. Especially around your retirement plan. And I like what they have set up for retirement plans, because it's almost a set it and forget it. So often we speak to clients, and you can ask them, they'll come to you, I want to have a full conversation, and you ask them, well, tell me a little bit about your 401k. Oh, I don't know. I just, contribute money to it. I don't even check it, but that honestly is intentional. They are there to be very simple, very straightforward and direct. You want to contribute a little bit by a little bit. So you can do that, of course, for your 401k, but you can also do that for yourself if you want to set up a separate, retirement account or investment account. Make it so that you contribute a little bit out of your savings every week or every month, and set it up automatically so you don't think about it, especially so you don't see it. Because when you see that balance begin to accumulate and you see it begin to grow, you get a little antsy. Now that new car seems a lot more affordable, I can make a good down payment on it. That cell phone, that new Samsung or new iPhone 12 that's come out, those AirPod Pros, I got that in the bank. I can go ahead and buy that. But honestly, that's just the mentality that it comes around it. So you want to set it so you can't see it, and make it automatic so that no excuses for why you didn't transfer it. It's already done.
Thank you. We have a few more questions. How do entrepreneurs and small business owners prepare for retirement?
Sure. So with small business owners and entrepreneurs, first and foremost is their business. That is their lifeblood. That is specifically what they give their all to. So they're a bit of a unique investor or a unique client that we deal with because typically they have a lot invested into their business. Um, and it's usually kind of their bread and butter. So he provides the bulk of their income, their lifestyle, and everything. So the conversation is just a little unique with them. Um, but there are accounts types in place that can really assist them in putting funds away. And they have higher limits than what we typically have available afforded to individual investors, specifically because typically with an entrepreneur, you may not be thinking about retirement, when you just launched your business, you're 20 years old, 30 years old. It takes some time to ramp up and really get good at what you're doing. So a lot of times you have older individuals contributing in their 40s, 50s. And it does take them being able to make those larger contributions to kind of cover the time in which they weren't. But a lot of, like I say, entrepreneurs, specifically, have a portion where they're looking to invest, but based off of the relationship, we talk about a number of things that really help them to be financially sound. But just to answer the question, like I said, there are things in place. And if you have a curiosity for it, some things you may want to consider, speak to a tax advisor. Got to put that disclosure out there. But there are retirement accounts, SEP accounts, simple, which are, simplified employee retirement plans. Number of things that are out there, very similar to what they have for individuals. So what you may see typically, you hear about typically 401k, traditional IRA, Roth IRA, just know that there are those options available for businesses as well. So you're not on an island by yourself. You didn't put yourself in a position where you can't, put away tax advantage dollars for your business.
Thank you so much. We have an additional question. What is the difference between a 401k and a 403b? Is one better than the other as far as saving for retirement?
Sure. Now, they may be a little bit different in some of the nuances as far as rules for what you can do with the funds, but ultimately, they're very similar. The idea is that you put these funds in, tax advantage in the sense that you put pre-tax funds in, they grow, and then ultimately when you go to access them, they're taxed at that time. Real difference is that one is typically for just your general corporations or businesses. The other one is for, nonprofits. But the thing to remember, they're very similar in how they function and the purpose for which they're being accessed. So why people are using them.
Thank you. I know we're running a little bit over time, so if anyone has to leave, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, we will move on to some additional questions that we have. Joelle, what are the best ways, given what's happening right now with the social events, what are the best ways to invest in our communities responsibly?
Sure. Happy to really speak to that a little bit. So much is going on, and it's difficult to see. It's difficult not only just to hear about the things that go on, but I think a lot of it begins with being accountable to yourself. One thing I typically speak on that's a little bit different. I talk about finding joy in how you spend your money and how you budget and where your dollars go. But also there's a social responsibility there. Know that you have economic power in the dollars that you have. I don't care if you have 1,000, 100,000, or 1,000,000. Your dollar speaks. It speaks as loud as your vote. So know that. If you want to make sure that you're impacting your community, put your dollars there. Every week or every other week, I go to just a local, event. Not right now, of course, but before I would go, and we were supposed to be starting back, but in light of kind of how cases are going, we're going to hold off. But it was a simple local event where vendors come together in Jacksonville, and I made it a priority to take a moment to actually stop by, some African American vendors, see what they had. And there was a farmer there. And every time I go, I buy some seasonings, I buy some vegetables. Um, Not the best cook when it comes to soul food, but hey, it doesn't hurt to try. And I know I'm doing good with where I'm putting my dollars. So I personally have become very conscious of how and where I spend my money because I want to make an impact with my dollars and I want to make sure that my voice is heard. So if I feel like I am not getting support from a certain place, they can't get my money. And honestly, this blueprint is not nothing new. They've been doing it since the Civil Rights Act and probably even before then. Reconstruction, I mean, you can go back, the history is there. Know that your dollar has value, your dollar has a voice. Just how I answer that one.
That's good. Thank you so much. Additional question. How do you determine which investing method is best for you? Example, stocks or bonds? How do you determine what is best for you?
Yeah, so it can be as complicated or as simple as you want to make it. But to take the simple approach, um, what I would typically say, and when I was more so, I won't say a trader, but when I was on the trading desk and initially was kind of helping out with the advisory with Merrill Lynch, we'd have to talk to a lot of clients. And especially on the advisory side, you'd have to kind of evaluate their comfort level with risk. So I begin the conversation right there. You know, I'd ask them, of course, the questions around savings, make sure the foundation was in place. But if they were ready to go ahead and put some money in the market, first thing I'm going to ask about is the elephant in the room. Let's talk about risk. What are you willing to, and I might not use the word lose, but, tell me, how do you feel about the market? How do you feel about possibly having your funds, appreciated by a certain amount or depreciate, especially on the downside? And typically that will kind of draw out, okay, yeah, I'm not really looking to risk it all. And it just really opened the conversation to say, you know what, I'm glad you were honest. Let's talk about it. So maybe we don't look to get all in stocks. Maybe we look to, of course, incorporate a little bit more, grow slow, nice and slow kind of things, such as fixed income, which is kind of the income portion of the portfolio. Now, again, you can get into how you want to slice that up any number of ways, but very simply, the more time you have, the more you can actually, put risk into the portfolio. If you're going to be investing for 30 or 40 years, look at any chart, any graph. It's not going to matter. If you actually have the patience and it's going to be funds you're not going to have to access, it's going to grow over time. Don't know what that's going to be, but it's pretty much going to average out anywhere from maybe 6 to 8%. Who knows? If you are going to need these funds a little bit sooner, back off of that a little bit. Maybe we don't do as much stock. Maybe we do 80%. Maybe we go down to 60% stock. And you really kind of gauge it based off of kind of your comfort level with risk and also your need for the funds. If I give you just two things to look at, those would be the first fundamental things you evaluate. When are you going to need the funds? If it is for retirement, 20, 30, 40 years down the road. And then again, your comfort level with the market. Just yesterday, the market was down. This is, the S&P, so we'll say about just 2%. We'll round it off. Some people aren't comfortable seeing that, amount of, up and down in their portfolio. So that's why you have fixed income to balance that out. So maybe a blended portfolio, instead of being down 2%, maybe it was down just 1% or 0.5%, depending on how conservative you want it to be. But you have to ask yourself those questions and really kind of dive into it and see, what am I comfortable with and when am I going to need these funds? Especially on the need the funds part, that may put a cap on that and say, if you need these in 3 to 5 years or 2 to 3 years, you might want to look at something else a little bit more safe.
Got you. Thank you. What apps, this is an additional question, what apps can I use to help me start investing?
Sure. I believe MarketWatch has an app. So marketwatch.com. That's just, I have the website just molded in my mind. Morningstar has a good app with a lot of information. those are two very good ones. Seeking Alpha is another one you'll hear about. But also, don't be afraid to check out some of these online brokers. Merrill Edge, TD Ameritrade, Charles Schwab, any of the online brokers, a lot of them are giving free accounts away. And well, not to say free accounts, but they're not charging any trading fees, and they're not penalizing you if you open an account and if you don't fund it. So let's say you open an account, kind of check it out, browse around, looking at some things, but you decide, what, I don't think I want to invest. Just honestly, in most cases, no cost to close, the account. But as far as like say apps, just to kind of get your feet wet and to kind of understand the lingo. Another thing I will suggest, Investopedia.com. That's a great resource for you to really learn the lingo, especially as it relates to definitions, examples, videos. That's been a great resource for me. And when I was initially coming into the business, should I have a call where I did not understand something? That's the first place I was going to educate myself on that. There was one place, I think benefits.ml.com. It's on the PowerPoint slide. They have an education section, and that website should also have a glossary as well. So take advantage of it, learn the lingo, turn on the TV, CNBC or MSNBC. I don't know what channel it is for whatever provider you have. Yahoo Finance, Bloomberg TV. Begin to just expose yourself to it, and you'll begin to kind of pick up on, kind of where, the talking heads are really, thinking about what's going on in the markets. I think that's really best. Like I say, give yourself some positive exposure, and you'll find yourself successful sooner than later.
Thank you so much, Joel. At this time, I do not see any additional questions in the chat. So at this time, we're going to wrap up. But I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. And again, thank you so much, Joel, for presenting today on saving, budgeting, and investing. Honestly, I learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone else has. Following our presentation today, you will be receiving via email an evaluation form. We ask that you please fill out the form, let us know what you thought of today's program, and just in general, any additional topics you would like to see for future programs. Filling out the form will help us plan future events and programs of interest for our community. Additionally, I'd like to highlight that we have 2 additional events in our financial literacy event series. We're going to take a break. Next week is election, November 3rd. So if you haven't done so already, please make sure to vote. We're going to pick up on Tuesday, November 10th. We will be talking about how to financially plan to purchase a home. And then on the following Tuesday, November 17th, we will be discussing how to get rid of your student loan debt. So if you haven't done so already, please register. And again, we will be sending an email to our participants. You don't want to miss these 2 events. Joel, thank you so much. And thank you, everyone else. We hope to see you soon, and have a good night. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.